we go.
Of God. I see. This is kind of goes back to where I'm saying initially.
I'm not defining it. Elijah defined
Okay, so
it.
as Elijah defines
It's
God.
defined that way in Jonah too.
Okay, so as
Cardinal Newman also defined it that way.
As I'm sure you know many people who've defined it that way, and it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm just pointing out to you how God is defined.
He's always trying to be impressive.
So,
I don't know what he's talking about.
That's why he uses such superfluous words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he will say things that are absolutely fucking nonsensical, but they sound so smart.
Yeah.
He talks about the metaphysical substrate of reality so often. Like, can you define that? No? Okay. How about you don't ever use that term again then?
Yeah.
To respond to that, I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God. And that goes back to my kind of opening
Then how do we
statement.
specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, or again, it goes back to my example of the Mona
I'm defining
Lisa.
God as conscience.
Okay.
Let's define God as broadly as possible.
What do you mean you're defining God as conscience? That's the dumbest definition of God I've ever heard.
If you're unconscious, does that mean you're an atheist?
Godless.
As long as you're knocked out, you're an atheist.
Yep, every
As soon
time
as
you
you
go to
wake
sleep.
up and conscious.
What a stupid definition of God.
Yeah.
So God is an emergent property of brains? I guess I agree with that, actually.
It's not quite the same way.
Yeah. Oh my, jeez. That's stupid. That's real stupid.
Yeah.
But it's Jordan Peterson, so.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but then you're kind of expanding the meaning of
No,
God.
I'm not. That's how it's defined.
No, yes, you are. You're expanding the meaning of God to be like so broad that no one can say that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
No one would say consciousness does not exist. At least I don't think. Like maybe someone would, but like probably no one would say consciousness doesn't exist. So you're defining God in a way that everyone believes in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's stupid.
Find in the Old Testament,
Okay,
in
so-
Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So whoever. So
It's
some.
not whoever.
Okay.
Elijah is one of the
Okay.
major
All right.
Old Testament
All right.
prophets.
All
Right?
right.
He's equal in stature to Moses.
Okay.
Right. So it's not arbitrary.
All right. So that is interesting, but it's not relevant to the context with which I am using the term God.
It's directly relevant. Atheists reject God, but they don't
but
understand
you-
what they're
We
rejecting.
reject consciousness, is what he's saying.
You're rejecting consciousness? That's ridiculous. No, your definition of God is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could define God as like this can of Monster. That doesn't mean that I believe in God. That just means I have a dumb definition of God.
Right.
Yeah. What everyone
Yeah.
agrees the word God means is not consciousness.
I believe this bottle of water, this water is God. And so
my God and your
therefore,
God can fight.
Yeah, we're gonna fight because we believe in different gods.
Yep.
You accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old Testament.
I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
In what way?
Because again,
I asked you if you.
There is actually a logical fallacy, which is you're making your argument using the ambiguity of words
Yeah.
to make your argument. Basically, using a word in different ways in each premise of your argument. So, saying that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. Like, no atheist is going to say, like, oh, you're saying God is consciousness? I guess I'm not an atheist.
Yeah.
Atheists just aren't going to agree with that definition of God because it's stupid.
Yep.
You believe that conscience guided you.
You just asked me a question and then you stopped me from answering it. In this setting, you understand the way I am using the term God and belief.
Not in the least. I don't understand how you're using it in the least. That's why I'm trying to define it. My definition of God's conscience is a lot.
Stupidity?
So what he's doing here is, again, he's like, just like the guy said, he's being disingenuous. He does understand what the guy means.
Yeah.
He's just being obtuse on purpose.
Right.
Because the guy's argument destroys Jordan's.
Yeah.
A lot more precise and oriented than your definition of the God that you hypothetically disbelieve in.
It's irrelevant to the fault lines of
the God that you hypothetically disbelieve. Pretty sure he doesn't believe in any gods. He's an atheist.
Yeah.
So, if you disbelieve in all gods, then why is that hypothetical?
of this debate.
How is it irrelevant?
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheist, God, belief, not belief,
I
we're
don't
not
care
talking
about common parlance. I'm trying to get to something fundamental.
I think your point is irrelevant to the way that people tend to use these words. Your point that there are these polysemous
I didn't make that point. You did.
I made
a specific point that God was associated with conscience.
I just feel like you kind of retreat into this semantic fog.
I'm not retreating at all. I'm advancing, sir. You are retreating.
Okay. All right. Well, it was very nice to meet you.
Nice.
He absolutely was retreating into, like, well, you're not defining God in the same way that I am, so my argument is definitely still not defeated.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
I'm
well,
define God in such a way that it doesn't make any sense and you can't fight it in any way.
Theists claim they accept God, but they don't understand what they're accepting because God, again, is this kind of monster.
That's right.
So unless a theist accepts this as their God, then they're wrong. They don't understand what they're accepting.
Right. Are you out of monster now?
Yeah, it's very brave of you to
can't
do
empty? Yeah. You're an atheist now again.
I killed God.
You killed God.
I killed God just now. I have crushed God.
Surrounded is now a podcast, available wherever you listen. Search Surrounded, plug in, and stay part of the conversation.
I don't think it would be very good as a podcast, actually. Maybe.
Maybe it would. I don't know. Like,
but being able to see the people and like see their interaction, I feel like is much better.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Surrounded is like one of those shows where, like, every once in a while they have an absolute banger, like really. But most of their episodes are just like garbage.
Yeah.
My next claim is that morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
I would agree.
Yeah.
That is not the purpose of science.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be like saying, computer science does not tell us at all how to build a bridge.
The only, agree. The only, argument I have against that is there's literally morality science, and I don't think it's called there's a purpose science, but there is, a science of, in psychology, people trying to figure out what that means, right? Purpose and morality.
But I would say, morality and purpose are the domain of philosophy, right?
Yeah, traditionally, yes.
Yeah, not science. So I don't think that I would disagree with Jordan Peterson on this claim.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he thinks that atheists would.
I don't know. I'm sure he'll get some arguments. Because, people find at least purpose in science itself, not from science, like from within science, but in the act of performing science.
Wait, does he mean that science is immoral?
Amoral as in without morality, I think, but that would make sense because science is not morality, right?
Yeah, like science is amoral, just like carpentry is amoral.
Right.
But is he trying to claim that science is immoral, saying that there is no morality in science? Like doing science is immoral. Is that what he's claiming? I guess we're going to find out. But what I think he means here is that science can't tell us anything about morality and purpose, which I agree with. It's not why we do science. We don't do science to...
I'm going to disagree with you, but in the way that I did before, because there is actually scientists who are studying morality and purpose. And
yeah,
in that
I think
sense,
science
can tell us.
I think science can inform philosophy on morality and purpose.
Okay.
But science itself can't be determine morality because it's not like that's not its purpose.
Okay. Yeah.
Science determines what's real, and morality isn't something that is real. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Morality is not like a physical thing that you can touch and hold, breathe. And neither is purpose. Like, if anything, science has shown that there really isn't a purpose to life.
Okay.
Which is fine. Like, there doesn't have to be an objective purpose to life. Well, you can have subjective purpose to life.
There's no purpose, all-encompassing purpose for everybody, in a sense, but you can find purpose within your own life.
Yeah. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that science has shown that there's no purpose to life. It's just that science has never demonstrated any hint of an objective purpose to life.
Okay.
Life just arises out of the physical interaction. If you just let the universe go for long enough with its physical interaction, life will arise out of it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Again, you can live your life with a subjective purpose, and that's totally fine. There doesn't need to be an objective purpose, just like there doesn't need to be objective morality. You know, morality to me is vastly different than morality to an octopus.
Yeah.
To an octopus, if I kill an octopus, I did something bad. I mean, I guess to me also I did something bad if I killed. But like, you know, let's say a parasitic flatworm, right? To me, if I kill a parasitic flatworm, I've done something good. I killed a parasite that was hurting someone or had the potential to hurt someone. But if I do the exact same act from the perspective of the flatworm, I've done something bad, right?
Yeah.
Because I killed one of its brethren, or it. Which flatworm I'm talking about. So morality is not objective. And I think what Jordan's probably going to lead this line of, lead this claim into is that within religion, you can find objective morality and objective purpose. And I just don't think that that's true. It's still subjective.
Yeah.
Because if you ask most Christians, is slavery acceptable? Is slavery moral? Most Christians, not all, but most, will say that no, slavery is not acceptable. But in the Bible, slavery is clearly acceptable. God gives guidelines on how hard you can beat your slaves before it becomes immoral.
Yeah.
And that, if the claim is that the Bible is where objective morality comes from, then that's just wrong, because that's immoral to me. Again, like, morality is relative.
Yeah.
Is subjective. So,
no.
But I don't think that the majority of people would say that slavery is ever moral.
Right.
That is immoral.
Yeah.
What is up, Mr. Canada?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
What's
How are
your
you?
name?
Brian. I think it's interesting that you say that morality and purpose can't be found in science. Actually,
No, within science.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Purpose, I actually grant you, because purpose is subjective, right? Unless you want to boil it down to the purpose of life is just to procreate, right? Sure, whatever. Morality is actually something that we do see. We actually have examples of Neanderthals, and older individuals found in a tribe, missing an arm, missing teeth, still alive.
Okay, so what he's talking about is like the evolution of morality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is scientific. Yeah.
Yeah.
That can absolutely be found in science.
Well, it's the same thing you said before. Like, science can inform on morality, and this is exactly a way that it can.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that way, Jordan Peterson is wrong. But I think what Jordan Peterson means here is science can't determine what is and is not moral, which I would agree. Science can't determine that, but that's not science's job.
Well, I think there's like a hidden other part to that sentence, which is, the first part being science can't determine what is moral and what is not. But religion can. That's kind of his an undertone, I think. Except he's not Christian, so.
Like, if we're going to say, it's a gotcha that science can't determine what is and isn't moral, I would say it's a gotcha that drywall can't fly a plane.
Yeah. Good point.
If God were real, drywall would be able to fly a plane.
That's right.
I have somehow in this.
Was that nonsensical? Just like Jordan Peterson.
40s, 50s, right? Typically, you're a Neanderthal, you can't eat, you can't hunt, you die, right? But we know that members of his tribe were taking care of him, right? So we know that at some level, early in our evolutionary history, we actually developed altruism. We have examples of chimpanzees who actually have a basic understanding of fairness, right? If you give a chimpanzee 2 grapes, right, and his buddy gets 3, right? He actually freaks out, right? But you give both chimps 3 grapes and they're good. We have examples of parrots.
Except for the greedy chimps.
Except for the greedy chimps.
They want 4 grapes.
They want 4 grapes. Those do exist, right? But we have similar examples where we do animal tests, right? And
so morality is intrinsic.
I think.
So it precedes science.
That's not what he said. So I think Jordan Peterson here is like purposefully misunderstanding.
Yeah.
He said that morality has been shown to exist in early human species, although Neanderthals weren't an early human species. They were a late human species. But it also has been shown to exist in other primates, chimpanzees. He's not saying that morality is intrinsic. He's saying that morality evolved.
Yeah. So he's saying that there evidence exists that other hominids had some form of morality. Hominids being human-like species. And it seems to occur in, as you said, in chimpanzees.
Yeah, so Neanderthals are more than human-like. Neanderthals were human.
Okay.
Any member of the Homo genus is human. What the word human. Homo sapien.
Okay.
Though it's kind of debated whether Neanderthals were Homo sapiens. They may just be a subspecies of Homo sapien. Or they may be different enough to be considered their own. The thing is, species is a concept that humans invent. It is not a concept that just existed in nature that we discovered. We invented the concept of species to explain our observations of So whether Neanderthals are different species from us kind of depends on your definition.
Yeah.
But they were very similar, and they were also a pretty late species. They arose about the same time that we did, a little bit earlier. But humans and Neanderthals, like modern day humans, Homo sapiens, and Neanderthals lived at the same time, interbred with each other, and for some reason Neanderthals died out and we.
I think that actually
right?
a better way to define it would be that social animals, which we are, right,
Yeah.
require some level of morality or
Into what? I'm not disagreeing.
Sure.
Why do they require that?
Because it's only
To live. What do you mean? I mean,
Why do social animals need some level of morality?
Yeah, to live. What does Jordan Peterson mean? Why do they require that?
It's pro-social behavior, basically, is what morality. Is
Like
it morality in itself pro-social behavior, or is the behaviors that result from a sense of morality pro-social?
Not sure what you mean by that.
Pro-social belief, I guess. I don't know. Huh?
I'm not sure what you mean. But what I think he's saying is like morality evolved as a necessity for social animals.
Yeah.
If you want to be a social animal, you have to, like as a species, you have to have morality or the
Right.
species will die out.
Right.
I think is what he's saying.
Saying like pro-social behavior is basically behavior that enhances sociability. It's positive for social interactions and stuff,
Yeah, and it evolved in social species.
Yes.
Yeah, which
And
is beneficial.
That morality, it's questioning whether or not morality is in and of itself a pro-social behavior, or I guess what I'm saying is it a pro-social belief or thought or something that then leads to pro-social behavior, which is what is actually important.
But yeah, again, I think Jordan Peterson here is like purposefully misunderstanding. He asked, why do social species require morality?
Yeah, I don't think it's a serious question in the sense that he's. I think he knows. He's probing the issue, not actually ignorant.
I think the obvious answer is that if they don't have that, they die out.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how evolution works. If you're not fit as a species, you die out. Fit to your environment. Fit as in like fitness.
Right.
only way that social groups can actually survive, right?
That's my point with regards to science. Thank you very much.
Is that
precisely the point that you just made, that science has to exist within a moral framework that isn't in itself scientific?
How's that not scientific?
Well, because it's not derived from the scientific process, as you just indicated. My point.
Wait, science has to exist in a moral framework that itself is not. It doesn't have to exist in any moral.
Yeah, I don't know why it would need to exist in a moral framework, but
the scientific method does not require morality.
But who knows what he means by a moral framework, because he seems to think that, God is consciousness. So everything's out the window.
The Sega Dreamcast has to exist in a framework of morality that it itself does not contain.
Yeah.
What?
What?
No, it doesn't. The Sega Dreamcast does not require morality.
Right.
Yeah. The things are unrelated, just like science and morality.
Yeah.
In the scientific process. It's the fact that we are social animals and we need that to exist as a group.
I
right?
agree. But you pointed to the morality of Neanderthals, to the morality of chimpanzees. They didn't derive that from science.
They don't need to. That's not how that works.
That's my point.
Science explains it. So
no, science doesn't explain morality.
It doesn't explain how social animals would need to be.
Well, that's a complicated question.
But we see it though.
Yeah, but explaining the evolution of morality and explaining morality itself aren't the same thing.
Okay.
They kind of are, though.
What? Explaining morality and
like
morality
if you
itself?
explain how morality evolved, then you're also in that same vein explaining morality itself, right?
I think at some level, yeah.
Kind of like if you explain how a wing evolves, you're also explaining the wing.
Yeah.
What a wing is. Like a wing evolves to perform lift and
yeah.
have a creature fly in the air, right?
See what you're saying, yeah.
So if you're explaining that evolution, you're also explaining how the wing works, and just like how you're explaining how morality works when you're involved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could go more in depth into morality, and like you said, science of morality. So it doesn't have to be evolution, but evolutionary science, I think, does explain morality.
Yeah.
An act that is moral, one that is under the evolutionary science, one that is beneficial to the species.
Yeah.
So, you can go beyond that and say, like, what about the moral implications of harming an animal? Not bad for your species, but like, again, you're talking about like if someone's, maybe the evolutionary thing is like if someone is inclined to harm an animal, they might also be inclined to harm a member.
Yeah.
That might explain why humans generally don't like animals.
Yeah.
Although we do it all the time when we eat their meat.
Yes.
As you're asking, why does this happen?
Yes, that's more accurate.
Because we're social animals and we need to be.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that.
Is there?
Sure. For example, so we're moral animals that have a sense of the future.
Sure.
Okay, that makes us unique. And that structures our morality.
No, actually.
That makes us unique? No, it doesn't. Other animals understand the future.
Yeah.
What? Other animals make predictions.
I mean,
What the fuck is he talking about?
Birds fly south in the winter. I think they predicted that it's going to be winter coming.
Yeah, but like,
and vice versa. And
one of the most famous studies was of crows. I don't know if it was crows or just the family that crows are in.
Corvids?
But the study was like, can a crow plan for the future? And the result was basically, yes, crows can plan for the future. Make choices that are detrimental to them right now that will be more beneficial to them in the future than the benefit that the other choice would give them right now. So absolutely other animals are aware of the future and they can plan for the future. So Jordan's just totally wrong with this.
Yep.
Actually, there are other animals that can predict the future. Or not predict
really.
the future. No, tigers. Actually, there was a tiger at the SF Zoo that killed somebody. And so
Hunting
actually,
animals.
No. Kids threw shit at the tiger. The tiger actually plotted its escape, and it found the kids.
I'm not saying that animals can't think.
Okay.
No, but they can perceive the future. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Voted out by the majority.
Thank you, man.
good man. Yeah.
I wish he had brought up the study with the crows because it's so demonstrable of why Jordan Peterson is incorrect here. Like, not only is it like aware of the future and it can think, it can actually plan for the future and plan, its own choices around the benefits that it will receive in.
Yeah. Well, did you catch that? I think Jordan Peterson said that, planning for the future separates us from the animals. And then the atheist guy said, well, there's this example of a tiger. And then Jordan Peterson was like, oh no, carnivores can plan for the future.
Jesus. So even he knows that he's wrong.
Did you just contradict yourself?
Yep.
Hey, Jordan Peterson, how you doing?
How you doing, man?
My name's Luke. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you, Luke.
So your claim that morality and purpose can only be found in science is a little shaky because I think that your claim is really being framed to be morality and purpose can only be found in religion. Is that how you're kind of framing it?
I would say that the domain of religion is the domain of morality and purpose. Yes, exactly. And also that science is actually structured, at least in part,
Matt, I'm going to step away for a second.
To
Feel free to
eliminate
talk
such
over it.
considerations from its purview a priori.
Okay.
Right? That's why we define science as value-free. But that has to be wrong because scientists have to prioritize their attention towards something before they can even engage in observation.
Okay.
And that act of prioritization of attention is a value-predicated act. And so we I can continue. There's all sorts of things we have to assume
so
about science before it can take place.
Okay, so what I'm
so what we
specifically
actually
pointing out here
study
about religion
is
in particular, since you yourself are a
moral
Christian, right?
choice.
That's people debate about that, and I generally don't discuss it
I
publicly.
didn't catch that.
Okay, I understand.
spoke over it.
And me myself, I am a former young Earth creationist fundamentalist.
Oh yeah.
So I have experience in this. I used to run a TikTok channel directed about apologetics about the Bible, specifically in this type of facet with morality, evolution, and such, and going back and forth with that. So in the Bible, it talks a lot about slavery, right?
Yes.
Yes. So in that, it teaches you how to take care of a slave. Rather than saying slavery is wrong, I think
Now
it
it
should
says
say
that in the story of Moses.
It says slavery is incorrect. It says
Well,
it's immoral.
that's why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
But why does the Bible predicate
So
and tell people?
it's important that your people are not slaves, but you can keep slaves. Because later in the book, it talks about how to treat your slaves properly. But if your people are slaves, so that's wrong.
That's a very clear demonstration of relative morality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the people you're enslaving think that slavery is bad.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly how to take care of a slave. Isn't
Well,
that immoral? Wouldn't you say that culturally we've evolved as a species, as he said earlier about empathy?
Yeah, I would say that the reason we evolved, so to speak, away from slavery was because the West was founded on Judeo-Christian morality.
Absolutely 100% not. What the fuck are you talking about? Judeo-Christian morality approves of slavery.
Yeah. It's that whole thing where the slavery, and particularly in the United States, was both supported and fought against by religious people because we have a whole lot of them and they have different beliefs, and it's not clearly a religious or non-religious thing, or non-Christian thing, I should say.
Yeah. The slavers in the United States during the Civil War era used the Bible to justify their slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan is 100% incorrect here. Like, as incorrect as you could possibly be.
Right.
And the presumption that every person was made in the image of God.
Wouldn't you
And so
say that-
slavery itself became immoral, and
Yeah.
that was established by Protestant Christians in the
Yes.
UK, who then convinced
So, again, he's wrong here about like the kind of like Western view of every person was made in the image of God. That is incorrect. Under Christian mythology, man was made in the image of God,
Yeah.
not people, only man. And that is still a lot of people involved in Western politics think that way, that men are the important part of our species, that women are less important because women weren't created in the image.
Yeah.
In other words, a lot of people think God's a man.
Right.
And
Not consciousness.
yeah, Jordan Peterson doesn't think God is a man because Jordan Peterson thinks that God is consciousness,
Right.
which is weird. But no, he's wrong here again, too. I think the Declaration of Independence, doesn't it say that man is...
Every man is endowed by their creator.
Yeah.
Right.
Certain... I don't know. Anyway, the Declaration of Independence is also very, like, male-centered. Good thing that's not the law. When people quote the Declaration of Independence as if it's the law, like, no,
Yeah.
incorrect.
Right.
Not the law. The Constitution is...
Right.
Yes.
the UK government for 200 years to go to war on
And
slavery.
wouldn't you say that this is about the cultural evolution of humans in general rather than just
No,
Christianity?
I think it's the
'Cause-
flowering of the ideas that were embedded in the biblical texts across space.
The ideas that were embedded in the biblical text are that certain people deserve to be slaves. Those were the ideas embedded in the biblical text. If you read the text, don't come out of it with those ideas. It's not because those ideas aren't in the text. It's because you're not a monster.
Yeah.
The ideas in the text are monstrous.
Right.
Long spans of time.
I feel like this is just humans editing based on the cultural evolution
What do you
of
mean
morality.
by just?
Just?
Yeah, just humans.
Well, humans.
Editing.
Well,
Yeah.
based on culture and
What does he mean by just? He means it's not. That is the explanation. That's the full explanation. That's the definition of the word just.
Yeah.
Like, this is just a phone, as in it's not also a car.
Right.
Yeah. I think Jordan Peterson just loves being an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, he can't talk to someone and just like use words normally, like a normal human. He has to be, he loves to be like super pedantic and like ridiculous in like his use of vocabulary and just generally an asshole.
in history, right? We get better.
Well, they
in-
did do it based on culture and history, but
Yes.
culture and history have their foundations too. So
Well, yeah, but we're talking about slavery. So many people bolstered it based on the
everyone,
Bible.
except
Based on the Bible, they
that's
looked at
much
it and
less
they
true.
justified it in the United States and the Deep South. They justified slavery.
Yeah, but the
based
main
on the
thrust,
Bible.
the main thrust of Protestant thought in particular was stringently
Yes.
against slavery.
No,
No.
incorrect.
I mean, again, it was both sides. I mean, some Christians were for it and some were against it. The slavers were mostly Christian, just because everybody's mostly Christian in the
Yeah.
United States, use the Bible to support the institution of slavery.
Yeah, essentially, whether or not you were Christian had very little to do with whether or not you were pro-slavery.
Yeah.
Right? If you were Christian and you were pro-slavery, you probably used the Bible to argue for slavery. If you were Christian and you were anti-slavery, you probably used the Bible to argue against slavery.
Yeah.
Because different parts of the Bible have different ideas.
Yeah.
And like, yes, one part of the Bible is explicitly pro-slavery, but another part of the Bible is implicitly anti-slavery.
Yeah. Have you heard this concept? I don't remember. It was in a book or something, but there was like this idea that there are usually three related things in the Bible. It's like apparently all over the Bible with all different like concepts and stuff, where individually they sound good, right? They sound morally correct and everything. But if you put them together, like you put them close together, which they're not in the Bible, they end up being a contradictory, like triple kind of thing. That makes sense. So like if you just paired two together, they don't really contradict themselves, right? Or contradict each other. But the three together contradicted themselves, and it's basically used. What a lot of Christians will do that is basically to use that to basically say have the Bible say whatever they want. Is basically what I'm trying to say.
Well, the Bible kind of can say whatever. Because like
Right.
people don't take the Bible literally. Well, some people do, but like most people
Yeah.
don't take the Bible literally. Right? So
Right.
you can kind of just like use analogies, use like moral fables in the Bible to justify just about anything. Right?
Yeah.
The problem here that like I think Jordan Peterson not seeing is that, as I said earlier, the Bible is explicitly pro-slavery. It
Yeah.
says slavery is okay.
Yeah.
Not in those words, but I'm paraphrasing. It says slavery is okay.
Yeah.
Nowhere in the Bible does it say that slavery is not okay. But you can
Right.
implicitly, like you can infer from other things that slavery is not okay. So once people realized that slavery is not okay, I'm sure a lot of people knew it throughout history, but once the majority's opinion was swaying towards slavery is not okay, people started using other parts of the Bible to say like, well, if the Bible says this and you interpret it this way and you kind of extend that out to these other ideas, then we can say that God is anti-slavery.
Well, that's exactly what Jordan Peterson did, right? Because the atheist was like, well, there's specific rules for how you deal with your slaves. So obviously the Bible is pro-slavery. And then Jordan Peterson was like, well, Moses led his people out of Egypt to, make them, get them away from slavery, from being enslaved, escape slavery. So obviously the Bible is against slavery. And it's like, well, not what?
Against slavery for specific people.
Yeah. It's contradictory in the text.
Yeah,
not
surprisingly
explicitly.
enough, the Jewish Bible, the Torah, the Old Testament, is
Yeah.
against enslaving Jews.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I know that's
Against
like
enslaving
shocking.
Jews? Yeah.
That the Jewish holy text would be against enslaving Jews.
That
But-
is shocking. Oh my God.
But let me tell you, it is in favor of enslaving everyone else.
Yeah.
And it was about the only movement in the history
Yes.
of the human race that
Yes.
had an anti-slavery direction.
Which was driven by humans and their
Well,
understanding
that's one
of
way of
morality.
looking at it. Well, it depends.
It's the same with women's suffrage. I mean, women's in the patriarchy.
What do you mean it was driven by humans? Humans drove.
No, that was a really good point that derailed there. It is the same thing as women's suffrage, because in the Bible, again, it is very explicitly anti-women. Does not think that women should have any authority over men.
Yeah.
I forget where it is in the Bible, and specifically in the church. So you might say, oh, well, that's just about the church. That doesn't also extend to government. But it's very easy as a Christian to use that to justify saying women should not have the right to vote, because women shouldn't have any authority over men, as it says in the Bible. But again, like it's because we as a society evolve past these bad ideas, but we're so enamored with this old text that we can't give it up. So even though it's full of bad ideas, we have to keep it around for whatever stupid fucking reason.
Yeah.
And that's what Jordan Peterson, I think, I don't think he doesn't see it. I think he refuses to.
Yeah.
Slavery too.
Yes, exactly.
So there's no argument there. If slavery and anti-slavery were both driven by humans, what does your claim that they were driven by humans have to do with it?
Evolving morality based on the culture that within the society that they live in.
That neither of them were driven by God. That's the point, Jordan. Like Jordan is saying, the anti-slavery movement was driven by Christian morality. Like, no. It was all just social change. There was no like Christian morality guiding anything.
Yeah.
No, if anything, it was Christian morality holding it back.
Yeah.
If you could say anything about Christian morality here, it's that the parts in the Bible that were explicitly pro-slavery were holding us back from getting rid of slavery.
Yep.
Okay, fine.
So with women's suffrage as well as a very similar topic in the Bible, there are denominations in Christianity such as Pentecostal movement, which do bolster women to be pastors, right? Which I think that's a great thing to do. But most like to disregard
Where do you
women.
think the idea that human beings were sufficiently equal to all vote and not be slaves came from?
Humans.
It's definitely not the fucking Bible. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But so did the idea of slavery.
So did the idea of God.
Fine, but what's your
Yes.
point? Like, you're not making an argument. You're just saying all thoughts come from humans,
Yes.
regardless of the thoughts.
It's not.
Yes, that is the point, Jordan. That they didn't come from God. That's the point. You're not making an argument. You're just saying that reinstates your exact argument. Yes, that's the argument, Jordan.
Not driven by a higher power. It's driven on our experiences
Define
as
higher.
humans, which is what is best.
God, Jordan. God. The God of the Bible specifically, but God in general. Oh, man. Oh.
best for all people.
Is it driven by conscience?
It could be. Which conscious is also something that has evolved over time, and I think that's something that does evolve.
It's conscious, so God did it.
Empathy.
It's driven by conscience, therefore God.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, okay, if anything's driven by conscience, yes, it was God. You know what else was driven by conscience?
What?
Serial killers.
Yep, true.
They were conscious.
Yep.
So is Jordan saying that like literally anything that humans do is driven by God?
Apparently, because it's conscious, so
Like when I go take a piss, that driven by God?
yeah.
Yes, it is. Okay. When I go I don't know, when I just go to the store and get some food, is that driven by God?
Yes.
I would say that's driven by hunger, but
Right. Well, the hunger was put into you by God, by conscience, apparently.
Okay, I don't understand the point that you're making.
My point is that God influenced slavery. People looked at the Bible.
why does Jordan Peterson have such a hard time understanding like the simplest of points?
I don't know.
Like, is that he's actually that stupid, or is it that he's like purposefully being ignorant? He's playing ignorant to try and say like, you didn't make a point because I don't understand it, and I'm really smart. So if I don't understand it, clearly you didn't make a point. No, you didn't understand it because either you're playing or you're just monumentally fucking stupid. I'm saying probably more the latter.
Right.
And went, this is moral.
Keep in mind, this is post him like destroying his brain on benzos and then like
Right.
getting put
True.
into a medically induced coma to get out of his addiction, which,
Right.
I'm not saying that makes him like immoral as a person. I'm just saying it might explain like the trouble he has understanding like, really simple concepts.
Yeah.
Moral because God says so. Just like women's suffrage,
There's lots
and
of
just like homosexuality.
all human societies were slave owning, so
Yes.
you can't blame that on the Bible.
That's not true. What? That's not true.
No.
Not all human societies were slave owning. A lot, but not all.
Yeah.
And yes, you can't blame it on the Bible, but you can blame how long it held on partially on, because people used the Bible to justify.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the Bible's fault, but the Bible didn't help.
Yep.
And if anything, it may have hurt it.
If humanity decided.
Oh, wait, address that first.
What, about
All
slavery?
human societies were slavers, so you can't blame that on the Bible.
Well, you can say it bolstered it.
Well, not if you look at the broad sweep of history, because it was the Protestant Christians
Based
in
on
the
their
UK.
interpretation of the Bible,
It was the Protestant Christians.
which evolves over time.
Let's pause there. You've been voted out by the majority.
All right. Well, it was great talking with you,
nice
sir.
talking to you too.
Yes.
Dr. Peterson?
Good to see you, man.
Pleasure.
Somebody from the other side of the
Brian.
circle finally made it.
So the first thing I would like to say is I would like to engage in this discussion in a symbiotic manner. I would not like to engage where there is one clear winner and one clear loser. Emotions are activated and it ultimately comes about ego. So I'm just saying I'm really trying to understand your position, and I would just like you to really try to understand my position.
Deal.
Okay, sounds good. With that, if you're saying
I don't think that was really
morality and
symbiotic, but I think it's coming to the conversation in good faith, right?
Yeah. Symbiotic, I guess would mean it would be beneficial to both, but I don't know, maybe if you stretch the definition.
Yeah.
and purpose cannot come from science. Is the opposite of that true, that morality and purpose can only come from God?
That's a
It's
way
not really
of
the
defining
opposite,
it.
but
Yes.
Yeah, those are not opposites. That's not a dichotomy.
Right.
They could come
But
from
the opposite would be that morality necessarily comes from something other than science.
Well, the opposite would be that. I mean, not necessarily, because like he's saying morality and purpose cannot be found within science, right? So
right. So
you're saying the opposite is that they can be found without science,
somewhere other than science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think that even that is the opposite, because it could be that morality and purpose just can't be found anywhere, right?
Okay.
So
Fair.
I don't know. I don't think this is a good point. Like, I agree with it for the most part that morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
Yeah.
In certain senses of the word morality, in every sense of the word purpose, can't find purpose within. Purpose is something you have to find within.
Okay.
And if you choose to live your life with the purpose of praising a deity, first of all, I think that's sad.
Yeah.
You know, if you devote your life to praising a deity, that to me is like a relatively wasted.
Yeah.
There are so many better things. I'm not saying you did waste your life. I'm just saying, like, relative to other paths you could take, that is a bad one.
Yeah.
But at least if you're not hurting someone, like, not hurting people when you. But also, like, again, that purpose didn't come from the deity. I don't think that deities exist. So I don't see a purpose coming from any deity, Christian God or any other deity. If you find your purpose in praising the Christian God, good for you, but that didn't come from the Christian God, because you wouldn't even believe in the Christian God if your parents and society didn't teach you to be Christian.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't God handing it down to you. It was the traditions of your family and culture being foisted upon you that you choose to accept.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. That's good. So I would say that with regard to the first claim, say atheists don't understand what they're rejecting, because I would say by definition, God is the unity upon which moral claims are based. That's a definition, right?
Okay. If there is a God, what is the purpose of life?
Well, in the Christian tradition, the purpose of life is to engage in voluntary, upward, self-sacrifice so that the kingdom of heaven can be established on earth.
So you're trying to make it.
Oh, that what?
I mean,
that's
in
pretty
certain
specific
interpretations, but like the purpose of human life in Christian mythology, I would say, praise God.
Yeah.
That's basically the way I would put it.
Yeah, that's what I would think. I don't know where this other stuff came from.
You could say, you know, certain aspects of the Bible are to say, like, whatever Jordan Peterson, like, there are certain aspects of the Bible that would support that. But I think most people would agree that the best interpretation of the Bible is to say that the purpose of human life is to praise God.
Yeah.
To heaven and avoid hell.
Yes, that's a good way of thinking about it.
What is the purpose of heaven? Do you understand?
Well,
so here's the deal.
At minimum, it's the opposite of endless suffering. How about that?
The purpose of heaven is to praise God, right?
Sure.
The purpose of hell is to suffer because you didn't praise God.
Right.
Yeah,
it's eternal reward versus eternal punishment, right?
Wait, which one is
God.
the punishment?
What?
Which one is the punishment?
Supposed to be hell, but you know.
If I had to spend eternity praising some deity that I really think is awful,
yeah,
me, that's punishment.
Yep.
Like, heaven doesn't seem like a good place to be to me.
Yeah.
I know to other people, they actually like God character. They want to be around the God. But I would be upset if that was like my eternity. First of all, I don't want to live for eternity. Period.
Yeah.
Like I just don't want that. That is bad to me. So the idea, like when I pass by these, go to Disneyland, downtown Disney, there's like these booths set up by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
That like they have a few different sayings on the covers of their little pamphlets, but one of them is like you can have eternal life through Jesus Christ. And it's like, why would you want that?
Yeah.
Why would you want to live forever?
Right.
That seems to me like the biggest hell, like the most hellish existence possible.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it from a physical perspective, if your body lived forever, I think we would all agree that that's hellish, right? Because eventually the sun would blow up and you'd just be in the sun forever.
Yeah.
I mean, until the sun went out, and then you're just kind of like sitting there on the surface of the sun. I don't know. Can you be absorbed into the sun? I guess you're not as dense. So if your body can't be like destroyed or manipulated, you'd be sitting on the surface of the sun because the sun is much denser than you couldn't sink into.
Yeah.
So you'd just be stuck on the surface of the sun till the sun got swallowed by a black hole. Then you'd be stuck like right next to the singularity of a black hole forever.
Yeah.
Never leave there. There's no physical way to there.
Right.
So you'd just be stuck forever there, going insane.
Yeah.
And then if you still experienced things like hunger and thirst and tiredness, then it would be even worse because like there's no food in a black hole.
Yeah.
As far as we know. There's no water in a black hole as far as we know.
Yeah.
So like then you'd just be hungry, thirsty, and probably tired all the time for eternity, forever, stuck in a black hole.
Yeah.
We all would agree that that's hellish, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So if you had physical eternal life, yes, we would all say that that's hellish. But I understand that like they're not saying you have physical eternal life. They're saying you live in heaven forever. You have eternal consciousness in heaven forever. Heaven is supposed to be this place where like just experience like euphoria of love because you're close to God. And God is like euphoric. Kind of like being on heroin, but forever, and there's no
yeah.
But even I would say even that would be hellish to me because eventually you'd get fucking tired of it. Right?
Yeah.
No matter how good it is, eventually you'd get really tired of it, especially when you're talking about forever.
Yeah.
You know, you might say, well, it's been 100 trillion years. It's been so long, I can't even remember what it was like before this state of reality for me.
Yeah.
And that is just the very beginning of it.
Right.
It's now been 100 billion years, which I don't know what that is, like a quintillion or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been 100 of that many years. You're still just at the beginning of eternity. You haven't even reached 1% of eternity because you'll never reach 1%. It's
right.
Eternal.
Yeah.
It's for fucking ever.
Yep.
Why would you want that? Eventually, I just want to stop existing, right? I'd prefer it to not be for a while.
Yeah.
Well, I personally would like to live to maybe like 200 years. It would be really cool.
Yeah.
But like by 200 years, I will probably really want to die. Probably by 100 years, die.
Yeah.
But like it would just be really cool to live to like 200 years. How life is 200 years or 100.
Yeah.
But like, you know, even if I could make it to 90 years, I'd consider that a good run, and I'd be happy to like end my existence. But when I do eventually die, I don't want to live forever after that. I just want to stop existing, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like Christians view the concept of just not existing as horrible. They view it as like this horrifying event where like, oh no, I've stopped existing. The worst possible thing to me that could have happened to me happened. It's like, no, you're just not going to care. You're not going to care because you're not going to be there. You're not going to experience time. You're just going to, it'll be like the 13.8 billion years before you were born, right?
Yep.
It'll be just like that forever into eternity the other way.
Yeah.
So you won't notice and you won't care.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
that's
much.
not bad. That's the best end to my existence I could imagine.
Yeah.
And
I want to
so
point out
should we-
that I think talking about being forced to praise a God that's really, really an asshole is something that the Republicans are finding out about right now.
What?
Being forced to praise a God who's really an asshole.
Oh,
the name of Trump.
With regard to Trump. Yeah. Yeah, it turns out Trump doesn't care about you Republicans. Sorry.
Yeah, he doesn't care about anything but himself.
Nope. Yeah, we tried to warn you.
Yep.
Not try to achieve infinite suffering on planet Earth, and if we can achieve infinite suffering,
but like it is like infuriating to me how many of them will say things like, "Oh, well, Kamala would have been worse." Like, really? Do you honestly think that? Are you that fucking thick-headed that you think Kamala would have been worse than Trump?
Yeah.
Like, what could she have done to be worse than Trump?
No idea.
Rounded up all the white people, maybe?
Which wasn't going to happen?
Yeah, Kamala would never do that, ever. But that's what they think. I don't fucking get it, man.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, Republicans are just like, their brain has been so thoroughly washed by all the conservative lie to me.
Yeah.
They just fucking love to hear those lies, and it distorts their view of reality so heavily that they can't even realize that like life was fine under Joe Biden, right?
Yep.
For 4 years, things were pretty normal. And they view those 4 years as like the worst 4 years in American history. Like, why? What happened? What happened that you're so upset with?
Yeah.
They can't fucking, no answer. Done.
Yeah.
planet Earth with
it's 3:00 my time, so that means noon your time.
Yep. Should we wrap this up?
I think so.
Did you want to stay and listen to this last point that he has?
I guess we can finish this last point then.
Okay.
You mean
without
avoiding?
God,
You mean
avoiding it. If we can do that without God, then does that defeat your claim?
Well, yeah, except that it doesn't. You circumvented my initial definition because I said that by definition, God was the unified source of morality. And so if we engage in a moral exercise.
And when you're talking about morality, though.
So that's it's again, like a bad definition, right? Because like you don't just get to define your God into existence.
Yeah. Well, also he previously defined it as conscious.
Right? Yeah, he has all sorts of these weird definitions of God. And it's like, if God is the unifying source of morality, right? And we've shown through science that morality evolved, then the unifying source of morality is evolution, right?
Yeah.
So now Jordan Peterson is basically saying, oh, well, God is evolution. I don't think he means to be saying that, but that's how I'm interpreting it because his definition of God is so fucking stupid.
Yep.
Anyway, we can leave it here. Yeah, Jordan Peterson is so infuriating. It's he never ceases to like make my blood boil.
Right.
Anyway, thanks for joining me. This has been Sylph Redacted. If you're listening on YouTube, because I might put this out on YouTube again, because I really like covering this video in particular. But if you're listening on YouTube, come check us out live. We do this show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. on twitch.tv/sylphweed, spelled like the mythical creature and then the stuff you smoke. And then Matt, did you want to call out anything?
I don't know. I would call out my my channel, The Power of Money, that's on YouTube, but working on a new episode. It's been a little while. Hopefully get a new episode out soon.
Yeah, check out The Power of Money on YouTube and check out echoplexmedia.com. That's where a lot of Echoplex's other shows are. I don't know if Sylph Uncensored is like considered an Echoplex show because it's on my channel, but Matt, you and I are definitely still part of the Echoplex community.
Yeah.
And I believe this show will be released as a podcast on Echoplex's site. So I'm considering an Echoplex show. If you want to check out our other shows, you can do that at echoplexmedia.com. And if you want to support Echoplex, you can do that at eplex.store or patreon.com/Echoplex. All right. Thanks, everybody.